Morning, guys. Talking about our fencing unit, day 3 of NTI. Here we are. We've made it through 3 days. I do appreciate your all's understanding and this being a learning process on my end. My hope is over the weekend to try and catch up and get things up in a more timely manner. Anyway, uh, yesterday we talked about fence post installation. I want to lead out today with a video that I saw and just a couple of things that I feel like I left out. This fencing company utilizes a dedicated fence post driver, and you can see that it's got some auger bits here and a rock auger to install fence. And the guy who is installing these posts here is just incredible with how comfortable he is with this machine. So I'm going to let you watch 50 seconds of it. Pretty crazy. So at the front, there's a carrier that allows them to pack the posts with them, so they don't even have to lay them out. And then it's got a swing arm. He's operating all of this from remote control. They've got their guide string at the bottom. He puts the driver down on the ground, and then he just starts the driving process. So pretty cool. From the fencing companies that I've seen, you don't have this big tractor that you've got to move around. You just have this machine and it's remote control and it's got this extension arm. And if you run into rock, you put your rock bit on and you can drill those holes out. So super cool. All right. Guys, today we are going to, if we look at our objective, continue on with fencing. We're going to move into talking about bracing this fence. So on the flashback, I just want to review 3 types of fence posts that we use in agriculture, and then tell me about 2 methods of installation that we went through yesterday. We're going to talk about the braces through this screencast, and then I want you to answer these questions for me. So day 3. If we go back to our slideshow, talk about corner post installation. Now, one thing that I felt like I didn't mention yesterday, but is worth saying, posts need to be in the ground at a certain depth. Minimum depth is typically going to be about 30 inches. Most of the time, though, we want to see those posts in at about 36 inches. And that's going to allow for a strong, stable hold against any pressure that livestock are going to put on it, any pressure that wind is going to put on this fence. So we're looking for 30 to 36 inches. I've seen some train wrecks of fence installation where people have run into rock. They've gotten those posts in 18, 20, 24 inches, and they've just tamped them down, taken a chainsaw and chopped them off. And you can do that. The fence is probably going to be okay. If it's all installed that way, it's not going to withstand much pressure from livestock. And if you get a blustery winter storm where we're getting drifts of snow against the fence wire, it's not going to be good, and it can get out of whack pretty quick. And if you've got groups of cattle that are being separated by this fence and the posts are only in 18 or 20 inches, there's a good chance they could push it over. So that is one component to having a good, strong fence. 36 inches in the ground on an 8-foot post, that's going to leave 5 feet out of the ground. And most of the time, this fence wire is about 48 inches tall. So you can have some space at the bottom. We don't want much space because we don't want predators passing under, but we can have some space at the bottom, the 4 feet of wire, and then there's some space at the top of the post if we need to put a barbed wire on there or something. So here we've got a beautiful example of a corner post installation, and what we see is an H brace. It gets its name H brace from having this H formation. If these posts are about 3 feet in the ground, out of the ground at about 4 feet, we've got our wire here, and then that cross brace going towards the top of the posts, and then we've got some space at the top. You'll notice that there's a wire that's coming at an angle. That wire provides tension to these posts. So we can either drive those posts in and then put our brace in, or we can auger these post holes with a post hole digger, and then we can concrete them. Either are a suitable option. I prefer to drive posts when the driving is good. That way, I mean, if you think about it, you are forcing this piece of wood into the ground, and it is going to have pressure on all sides by the earth's soil. If that you're digging it, you have more time involved in the digging of these holes. You have the concrete needed. You have to tamp some soil around there to keep that post straight. Some people prefer to concrete all corner posts. Again, it's a preference. I've seen extremely strong fences built with driven posts in the corners and all the way through. Talking about the H brace, the width on this brace from post to post needs to be about 8 feet. We typically don't want to see it much shorter than that, just because the cost of material is going to be expensive. I have seen some people make their brace posts about 10 feet apart, and I've seen some 12s. You actually significantly lessen the amount of tension that can be put on that bracing system because of those added feet. So 8 feet is kind of the standard on an H brace. And that's great, because when your posts come 8 foot lengths, you don't have to do any cutting. You will notice that this brace wire comes from the bottom up on the pulling side of the fence. So if this is our end post where the mouse or the cursor is right now, we put our brace wire going upward to apply tension back to this top H brace post. There will also be rods or long nails that should be fastened to this particular upper brace post. So we have the pulling force on the wire pulling towards the bottom, we have it pulling towards the top, and it's applying tension to that fence system. It's going to hold it in place strong and true. Let me see here. If we looked back at that picture, we noticed that they've got a board or some sort of tool that's being used to tighten that wire. Here are 2 examples of H braces. In this left example here, we definitely do not have an 8 foot spacing. We're probably looking at like a 5. So we are sacrificing some of that strength there just because that wire is going to be 4 feet tall, and we do not have that spread of tension going across that entire brace. This particular bracing system here is utilizing a metal brace pole, and I've seen good results with that. Metal has a tendency to break down and rust. If there is a place where water can get inside that pipe, if it freezes in there, it can expand and it can crack that pipe. The other downside is there's no real good way to hold that horizontal brace in place. We'd have to drill a hole and put a fastener in there, or try and drill into the post and then hope that diameter of that hole is large enough to put that pole in and tighten it down. So things to be aware of. I prefer just to use a wooden fence post. I prefer to run a piece of rod through the vertical post to hold it in place. I have some people toenail those posts in. It's really just a personal preference. But that wire, again, as you can see, is coming from the bottom of that corner post up, and it's going to apply that tension backward. And that should be true of any structure that you're trying to apply tension or bracing to. So if you build a door or a gate and you put a cross brace in there or a gusset in there, it should go from the bottom on the hinge side up. If not, it's going to sag. If you go top down, it's going to sag. So Slides got out of order on me. When we look at this particular brace here, fence wire comes in roll lengths of 330 to 660 feet most of the time. 660 feet is typically what you're going to be able to pull with a tractor or a pickup truck in order to get that wire tight. So that's going to be the maximum span that we can use before we need to add additional braces. So we see here that they have double braces. They've got their post depth. They actually have 3 feet 6 inches on theirs. They're utilizing an 8-inch diameter post for the corner, and then they're using 5 to 6 inch posts in the middle. They are offsetting the height of that brace post about 6 inches. And then they've got their diagonal wire again coming up from the bottom of that corner brace post. And so if that we've got a span, a fence that's straight and we feel like we can pull it, we've got a powerful enough tractor, you can get 800 feet. You'll just want to utilize a double brace. In the middle, you might try and put another brace in the middle. That way you can anchor that fence down and then go ahead and pull the next stretch of fence wire again. But double brace is very functional. It's very, very strong. So we have this bracing here. Another brace setup that can be used instead of twisting the wire is a ratchet setup. So in these other fence setups here, we just have a piece of wire that's been looped around and we just twist that rod or that piece of rebar or even sometimes a board, and that applies that tension to that H brace. Here, we've got a piece of wire that's strung around, and then we attach this thing called a fence wire ratchet. And should that brace ever sag, we can just put a handle on that ratchet and tighten it up. A lot of farmers are moving to this. I don't love this method because if that wire ever breaks, then the brace loses all of its tension. If that you double or triple up the wire on this side and you wrap it tight enough, if you feel the need, you can go back and wrap it once more or occasionally to put some tension, some pressure back on that brace. But it's going to hold true for typically for the life of the fence, which when we talked about life of fence posts yesterday, we said most of the time a pressure treated post is going to last about 20 years. You know, if the fence is installed very well, 20 years for a functional, strong fence is a good lifespan. And if you put that cost out over the course of the life of your farm, that's pretty average. If you can get 20 years out of your fence, you're doing pretty well. Some people will push it. My parents milk it for everything it's worth. So they're going on 30 years with a piece of fence right now. It's a little stretched out from the sheep trying to graze pretty close to the bottom wire. There's some rusty old fence that I know has been on farms in Boyle County for 40 and 50 years, and people just run with it. So to each his own. It's up to the manager at that point. Another fence wire option that you can use as your tension wire is this device called a gripple. A gripple has these teeth inside of it, and you feed the wire through a hole, and as you pull, it locks into place, and it's designed not to release. Positives: you don't have to have this ratchet. You can continuously tighten it. It's relatively inexpensive. It's very easy to install. Downsides: you've got to cut that thing off if you ever want to loosen the tension, which I guess is true of all of the bracing wire. And again, we're back to one wire holding this whole brace. So if it were to break, or if the gripple were to fail, and I've seen them fail, they just don't have the tension force that you might think, or maybe use the wrong one, the wrong application, then that brace loses all of its added tension from that wire. But something worth knowing about. It's called a gripple. The other type of fence post bracing that we can see on the corner is an angled brace, and they are functional for like garden fencing. If it's a small pasture that you're trying to divide up, if you're making a barn lot pen 40, 50 feet, you can get away with using this brace. But it's really not going to be all that strong. You have a limited pulling force. The other downside is even if you use a pressure treated post, for whatever reason, we tend to see more rot on that corner that's 6-8 inches down in the ground. So I don't love these brace systems. They're very popular in the Northeast. They're very popular when you get out to the Western United States, but I'm, again, just tried and true. I've seen H braces last for 20, 25 years and be strong and put good tension on fence wire. So that's what I would recommend. But anyway, guys, we're going to stop there today. Going back to your questions for today, just outlining kind of things that we've talked about. You'll answer those. You'll share those with me. Make sure you're doing your flashback, and we will see you again on Monday. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.